I'm Adrienne Hines. I've spent 20 years fighting the insurance companies, corporations, and the legal system.
And I'm Kristen Paris. I'm navigating divorce, digital business, and life on the farm without a map.
Here, we are stripping away the polite conversation. We're talking about the money,
the mess,
and the legal traps trying to ruin your life.
Welcome to Season 3 of High Heels and Hay Bales.
Welcome back to High Heels and Hay Bales. And this week, we're going off a slightly odd little tangent here. Most podcasts that talk about bankruptcy usually have a lawyer that's kind of telling you what it is. And today, we're going to talk to you about bankruptcy from both sides, because I think what a lot of our followers don't know, Kristen, is that you and I actually met when you came to my office as a client, right? So Kristen's been through it, and it just occurred to us we don't have an episode that literally talks about what it is we do and what it is I do and why we even started this podcast to begin with. It's Bankruptcy 101, and it's going to be told from a perspective of me, the bankruptcy lawyer, but more importantly, from the perspective of my podcast partner and my friend, Kristen. So, Kristen, we want to talk today about what bankruptcy actually does, what it doesn't do, who qualifies, and what life looks like on the other side. So just to begin with, let's just introduce everybody to how you and I came together. You found me on TikTok.
I did. I was scrolling TikTok as I do daily, and I was like, who is this breath of fresh air? And she's talking about bankruptcy. We've been thinking about bankruptcy. So I started binge watching her content, and I was like, oh, she's also local to me. I talked to my ex-husband and was like, hey, I think I'm going to call, because we were in a spot where we were losing vehicles to repossession. We had bills out the wazoo, living off credit cards, trying to keep a business afloat, realizing that wasn't going to work anymore. So I called and I set up a consultation with Adrienne, and that was, what was that?
Beginning.
That was the beginning of everything. But that was what, 2023? End of 2023? Something like that.
Yeah, no, because
I filed in 2024.
Yeah, so then it would have been
So
2023.
2023.
I think what's interesting, what I want a lot of people to hear is that you and I became friends. You reached out to me, we talked, and then you didn't move forward with your bankruptcy. You had your own TikTok page. I was, interacting with your TikTok, and you didn't even really move forward with me, but we kept chit-chatting and kept sharing content and stuff. And that's really, you slow walked it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I think what I'd like to ask is, what had you tried before you talked to a bankruptcy lawyer, for example?
Hiding from the debt collectors. That was like number one. Robbing Peter to pay Paul. That was big. So, a paycheck would come in. I'd pay this. I'd pay this much on the credit card, so I could pay this on this and this on that. And just a 411 for everybody, that doesn't work at all. That is like telltale sign you should talk to a bankruptcy attorney. Just saying.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul is a very obvious red flag in my world. And that is exactly what you're describing. It's taking all of the money that's coming in this paycheck and then having to decide how much of it is going to go to pay towards your credit cards and your debt. And then what's left over, you have to utilize for your household. And then the rest of your needs end up going back on a credit card. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul. That is what most people do for an extended period of time until really the wheels fall off the cart. And at that point in time, I know that when you talked to me, you didn't move forward with a bankruptcy for almost a year. It was like a good 9 months. And so, what kind of feelings of shame or embarrassment did you have during that time frame? Is that what was going through your mind at that point? Did you just think there had to be something else? What was it that was slowing you down?
So honestly, and this I think is a huge hang up for a lot of people, I was afraid I was going to miss a creditor. I was afraid I was going to miss a debt and not have the paperwork to back it up. I was afraid I wasn't going to have all the documents you needed. And to find that, now I don't know, maybe this is my ADHD brain, to find everything was such a daunting task to me because, again, ADHD here, I don't keep good records. I don't know how I have survived this long, but I don't keep very good records. So that was the hardest thing. And I did, I paid my deposit or retainer, whatever you call it. And then, yeah, I dicked around. And Taylor, your amazing, wonderful, beautiful paralegal, was so sick and tired of me. She told me one time, I see your phone number pop up, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, what now? And I think that's hilarious. Also, I love you, Taylor. Sorry. Maybe I should text her for old time's sake. Anyway, but it was really about the fact that I didn't know if I was going to be able to collect all of the information that I thought you needed. So that was my biggest hang up. Like, even though you were like, dude, I just need like a list or a possible, you know, yeah, I don't need totals. I don't need to know everything. I was like, I need make sure everybody is on here because I don't want to F this up, man.
Yeah. What you're just really describing is, you and your family had been surviving debt. And then once you kind of realized that bankruptcy was an option, you actually became overwhelmed and by the details, by simply the details of following through. And that's an interesting perspective for me to hear because I think I genuinely assume that most people are not moving forward with bankruptcy because they're afraid of the process or they're terribly confused about what's going to happen. And it is important to remember that this is a terrifying situation. I know that whenever my accountant emails me, my heart kind of sinks and I get overwhelmed. Even though I've done nothing wrong and I know that I've got everything. It is the ADHD desire to push it away and not address it at all. I can absolutely see how that plays out in this field. So I think ADHD is something you and I touch on a lot. We both have it, but we're really describing the fact that people are surviving debt. Right. So let me talk just a little bit about what bankruptcy actually is. I know that we touch on this in a lot of our podcasts, but bankruptcy is actually a legal tool that is available to both individuals like you and me and businesses like TGI Fridays and Rite Aid, right? It is written into the United States Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 protects our right to create bankruptcy laws and implement them in the United States. And we deliberately built them into the Constitution because we were coming from England, because we didn't want debtors' prisons, because the system that we'd come from in England was terribly unfair. Merchants and wealthy people could file bankruptcy, but poor people had to go to debtors' prisons. And that just was not something that sat well with us as Americans. So we created really two main types of bankruptcies for regular average people like you and I. Chapter 7 is what we call a liquidation. It gives you a clean slate. It's the fresh start everybody looks for. And chapter 13 is what we call a repayment plan. Now, today, most of the focus is on a chapter 7. It's much easier to explain it, but it's really what most people are going to file if they can. I want to say that a chapter 13 is the next best option after chapter 7, but you filed a chapter 7, correct?
Yep. Chapter 7. And I will preface everything else with I didn't lose everything. So before you start freaking out and questioning as we're talking, I'm going to lose my house, my cars, my this, my that. Not always.
Well, not hardly ever. I mean, I want to make it very clear. I've been practicing law for 30 years and I've never had a client lose a house. And I've never had a client lose a car that they didn't want to give up because they wasn't a good deal. So to be very clear, and this is such an important point, what you're describing is you really didn't lose anything. I mean, I don't recall you losing anything. That's how most cases go because most people don't have anything that is going to be taken from them because everybody where you file bankruptcy in the state you live in has a list of exemptions. So a lot of people don't understand the exemptions, and that's something probably for a deeper conversation at some point. But what everybody needs to know is that if you're going to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you first have to qualify for it. If you do qualify for it, the likelihood that you're going to, quote, lose anything is rather minimal. But the whole reason of talking to a lawyer, something that I think is really important, is to understand that if you did go down this path, what would happen? if it looks like you would lose your house if you filed a Chapter 7, then we don't file a Chapter 7. So that's the reality. People don't lose anything because they use lawyers and they find the right path for them and they do the thing that makes sure that they get to keep all the stuff that they want. That's why we have two different types of bankruptcies. I do want to say that the whole purpose of bankruptcy, what did you get rid of? You got rid of credit cards, right? Medical bills, probably.
I think there were some medical bills. I will admit to the fact that I had one of the loans from COVID for my business
Hmm.
that got discharged. And I know those have come under fire a lot. And there's some adjustments that have been made since I filed bankruptcy, from what I understand. But that big honkin' loan got discharged. Old utility bills, repossession, lawsuits, garnishments, any of the judgments we had against us, things that were just starting, all of it, it just was gone.
Everything stopped and it was all gone. And I do want to touch on the SBA EIDL loans. Those are dischargeable in bankruptcy. We can absolutely get rid of them. The differentiation, what we've seen come over the last couple of years is if you took out an SBA loan in 2020 because you had a business during COVID, and it turns out you lied about why you were entitled to those funds, right? You lied and said you had more employees than you did. That's a problem. Right? That's
Okay.
that's the issue that people are having is
Hmm.
people who got the loans through false information or people who received loans and then did not use the money for legitimate business purposes. I think I've talked before about, I heard at one of the conventions I was at, there was a woman in Texas who had had a small business and she filed for bankruptcy and was trying to get rid of her SBA EIDL loan, but she used the money to buy new boobs. She didn't use it in the finance apps. She just used the American government's, business money. And so when she went to file bankruptcy, it's considered fraud, and it should be. You had an actual business, and you took out a loan honorably, and it didn't work, and that's why you were allowed to file bankruptcy
Yep.
on it. Bankruptcy really is for innocents. It's for those of us who stumble into debt fairly innocently and without intention of ripping anybody off. And that's how most people find themselves in debt, to be
Hmm.
honest. There are some debts that we cannot get rid of in bankruptcy. It's going to be taxes, child support, alimony, and student loans. Although student loans, the taxes we can in certain limitations, and student loans are a big, huge area of controversy right now because the administrations that we're in, the president matters, right? And under Biden, there was an attempt to expand the ability to get rid of student loans in bankruptcy under certain circumstances. That is not as possible right now under this administration. There's always talks about things, but we can't really get rid of those for the most part. How long once you finally did, I mean, I think for you the longest time was from when we first talked until we filed. I mean, that would
Yeah.
took like 9 months. It doesn't usually take that long with most people, but we'll hold your hand for a while if you need it.
Yeah.
But once we filed, it went pretty fast, didn't it?
Yeah. So we actually filed the day before my 40th birthday. So that was fun. That was a good birthday present for me. We had a court date immediately. And I will preface, I thought Adrienne was going to end my life when my now ex husband, at our appointment with Taylor, when we filed, they gave us the date for our 341 hearing, which
Yeah.
is the meeting of the creditors with your trustee. And it happened to land on the day that my ex-husband was leaving to go on vacation to Japan for 10 days.
Yeah. Let me no, 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 no. No, 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 no. We must stop right here because that alone, I want everybody to hear. I am a bankruptcy lawyer. I have a woman who is a stay-at-home mom with a homestead with pigs and cows and stuff, and they are clearly in financial distress. And we file bankruptcy to stop garnishments and to deal with this stuff, and her husband says at the filing date, "I will be in Japan." And I was like, "Oh, what? What is happening?" Because I do not have clients who file bankruptcy and then 3 weeks later they are in a foreign country. Like that seems like privileged behavior, and it sounds expensive.
He had bought the ticket during COVID. Long story. They had rescheduled, whatever, and it just so happened that that's when our date was. So we had to scramble, and they had to change
He
our.
had previously bought the ticket. He
Oh
had to
my
use
god.
it. It was all on the up and up.
Right. It just happened to fall when it fell. So after I think our 341 was like right after he came back or something. So it wasn't even maybe 40 some days after we filed. And
Yeah.
then our discharge came in the beginning of September.
Yeah.
So it was that fast. It was not something long drawn out. We saw the trustee for probably 10 minutes, maybe. And that was terrifying. And then after it was done, I was like, oh, she really was telling the truth. That was super easy. So the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process takes maybe 6 months, maybe, and it's over and done with. Like, when you file, I keep telling people, the day you file, that's the day you can breathe easy. The phone calls stop. You don't have to worry about whether this is a phone call from the, bank you owe $20,000 to, or your mom. Like, you
Right.
can pick up the phone and breathe. You don't have to send everybody to voicemail. And the bills stop coming, and you don't have to worry about the next lawsuit or your wages being garnished. And the only downfall is 48 hours after we filed, I started getting letters from car dealerships offering me car loans. And that I showed Adrienne at one point, the stack was probably 3 inches tall of
Yeah.
of letters and offers. It was insane.
Yeah. The timeline in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, from the date you file a bankruptcy, it is generally going to be over in about 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
So, from the day we file, we know your bankruptcy 341 hearing is going to be scheduled about 30 days later. And from that date, from the date of your hearing, we know that 60 to 90 days later, the bankruptcy will be over. And as you experienced, that 341 hearing is something a lot of people are very afraid of. Everyone
Mhm.
knows you have to have a hearing after you file bankruptcy. And I've done lots and lots of videos and stuff on this, but that hearing lasts in my jurisdiction, it's going to last 5 to 7 minutes maximum. And the reason is because there's four scheduled every half hour. So tell us a little bit about your 341 experience, because this is the area where people are really, really freaked out. They really just think that the worst thing is going to happen to them at this hearing. But tell us what your experience was.
So it was Zoom, and we sat in a waiting room, and I could see Adrian, I think. I don't even remember that. But we sat in the waiting room waiting for the trustee to pop on. He pops on, verifies our identities by checking our IDs against our faces, asking us questions. And one of the best things that Adrian said was, answer yes or no. Don't offer information. Don't expand unless he asks you specifically. But even then, be short and sweet, to the point. Don't go too crazy. And I think there were a couple things that he asked us about that were, like, just not even of what I thought was important. Like, it was weird things, but not bad weird. I don't even remember. Honestly, like I said, it wasn't any more than 10 minutes, if that. And a lot of yes or no questions. Once we were done, it was like, okay, adios. And
Sayonara. It's
I'm
all
like,
over.
oh, that's it? Like,
Yeah.
that's all we gotta do? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
you push that little leave button on
Mhm,
Zoom, and it's pretty much over. So from the day we file until the day of your hearing is about 30 days. And then the day of the hearing, your hearing lasts 5 to 7 minutes, and then you push the leave button and it's behind you, and you're going to
mhm,
get something in the mail in about 60 to 90 days that tells you that your debts are gone. It's
mhm.
really a bizarrely simple process.
It
It's
really
so
is.
simple that I think people don't believe it. They don't believe that hearing is simple because they can't
Mhm,
imagine. I talked to a guy the other day, I had a hearing with him, and when it was all over, I was talking to him and he said, "It is hard to imagine that something so big and important and serious like getting rid of 50, 70, $100,000 worth of debt is reduced to something so simple and innocuous as this hearing. This hearing is designed to make sure that you're honest, to make
mhm,
sure that you are who you say you are. That's why we have to upload your driver's license. That's why it has to be by Zoom and not by telephone, so we can physically see you, right?
mhm,
Make sure you are who you say you are. But the whole point is you're allowed to file bankruptcy for credit card debt. You are allowed to do that. They can't come in and stop you unless you've been fraudulent, unless you lied about who you were when you applied for the credit card. I'm a doctor
Mhm.
making $1 billion a year. I'm really a salesman at Kroger, right? I don't, whatever it is, if you're lying, that's what you should worry about.
Mhm.
But my clients, if they're honest with me, they got debt. Your debt's
Yep.
not the problem, right? We can get rid of it. It's how it's designed, and people just don't believe it. Was that day emotional for you? I mean, did you guys get a good night's sleep, or did you listen to me? Did you trust me? Most of my clients don't trust me. I get it.
Which I don't get because I think you're like one of the most trustworthy people in the world, but maybe it's because you're my friend. And I
Yeah,
kind of went, please don't let me go. And you literally had to pull me across the finish line, literally
I
kicking
did.
and screaming,
I
pull
did.
me across the finish line. No, I don't honestly remember. I know I was anxious about it. I have high anxiety anyway. I'm pretty sure I slept, but like I didn't, once it was over, I was like, huh, okay. And went about my day because
There you
it
go.
really was not a big deal. It feels like this huge thing that you're about to walk in and be grilled and like, the trials on TV where they're like, "I can't handle the truth." No. It's a guy sitting at a desk like, "Do you have a 1990 Chevy pickup truck?" "Yeah." "How much is it worth?" "Oh, about $450. Okay. Do you remember taking this debt out? Yeah. What'd you use it for? Business expenses? Okay. Like literally just yes or no, sure, all right, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. And it's like the letdown from it, thinking it's gonna be so big was more more strenuous than anything. Like, oh,
Interesting.
huh,
Interesting.
that I shouldn't have freaked out so much about that. And then I just went about my day.
That's great insight from my perspective, I have to say. It really honestly is because even though I do this so much, I'm still constantly trying to understand the mindset of my
Mhm.
followers and my clients. And sometimes I miss the mark a little bit. And it's helpful to hear that. And hearing my client the other day say that it's just difficult to believe that it's this simple. Right. And I think you most people just assume this process has to be so much more complicated than it is. Just like when we started this conversation off, it took you 9 months to come up with the documents, even though I kept telling you, you don't need to have them in that detail. You don't need to do all of this. Just come to the table and let's start getting working on this. And you struggle just to come to the table on it. That is what I see a lot. I see people, the fear, I see the ADHD decision paralysis, I see the shame and embarrassment that all of those things stop somebody from coming toward my door. And you slow walked it for 9 months. That's 9 months you were robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's 9 months that you couldn't have had that comfortable feeling that you had literally the day after we filed, just to help people understand that this truly is a system that is designed to be helpful, and it is designed to protect you, and it is designed to work with you. And you need to lay down all the fears at the door and just explore it a little bit. You don't have to do it, but you have to start to lay the fear down so you can become curious enough to look into it. And that is really what all of everything we talk about is. The beginning line of my book is shame lives in darkness. Because if we're ashamed and embarrassed, we're not looking for the obvious answers.
Mhm.
And I think bankruptcy can be a very obvious answer in so many ways.
Mhm.
Well, I'd love to talk about all of the things bankruptcy can do. It can get your life back. It can, it can help you see your marriage with clarity, right? It can help you become a better parent because you're not focused on all of these things. And it can help you really refocus and get back into that business mindset. The whole goal of filing bankruptcy is to build wealth. So let me ask you, I know that it's been difficult since filing. But do you feel that long term bankruptcy is going to help you to achieve some of the goals that maybe you would not have been able to achieve but for filing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, there were things that had we not filed when we did, I wouldn't have been able to do after my divorce. And when we filed, I got rid of all of our debt. We had a lot of debt. After
Look at
we
me going to
filed
pull
and
open your file real
oh,
quick.
listen,
Keep
no,
going, girl.
I know it was close to $100,000.
I don't have any recollection. It could be 20,000, it could be
Yeah,
100. I don't
yeah,
that I bankruptcy lawyers, we don't care.
right,
I think a lot of followers, a lot of my clients think that I talk about them at the dinner table at night because it's just so outrageous that they're filing, and nothing could be
no,
further from the truth.
right,
Nothing could be
mhm,
further. Most people just fall into a very normal, "Oh, you've got debt. Now you accumulated the normal way? Yep, we're gonna file bankruptcy, and I don't even remember you." The reason you
exactly,
and I were friends is because we were friends on TikTok.
right. So had we not filed when we did, when we got divorced, it would have made that 100 times harder because
Yeah,
we had everything. I mean, our financials were still intertwined as far as vehicles in our house went, but after we filed bankruptcy and got rid of all of that debt, I kept my debt separate and he kept his debt separate. Neither one of us put each other on the credit cards we ended up getting afterwards. Um, we needed a better car, and I did buy one right after we discharged. That was one regret that I had, was that we had to use each other as co-signers because that did become a
yeah.
problem. But life got a lot easier because I wasn't constantly worried about the debt, and I wasn't constantly focused on trying to build my credit. Even though I did need to rebuild my credit, I did get another credit card after filing bankruptcy. I got a couple, which again was stupid. I should have stuck with one or two, but I got more than that. And then when my divorce came down, I started going back onto the whole trying to float things with credit cards and maxed myself out. And I'm digging myself out. The difference between now and before we filed is I know how to handle this. I know that if I'm at a robbing Peter to pay Paul thing, I would rather not completely cut off my creditors. I'd rather call and say, "Hey, this is the deal. I need either help or I need to pause this and make minimum payments. Don't, you know, don't unlock my credit card. Like, don't let me incur any more debt." Most of them have been cool about it. I've been making payments. And I also know that if I can't dig myself out of this or something happens in the future, I can file bankruptcy again and it's not the end of the world. Like,
Yeah.
I do know there's programs and I should have done it. And I'm sorry, Phil, I didn't. There are programs that help you get a credit card or build your credit back up over 700 in, a year or two after you file bankruptcy. I didn't follow that because I was like, well, I'm not gonna have anything bad happen. Turn around and I got divorced. And so now my credit is not great. It's pretty rough right now, but I'm fixing it. And the difference between now and 2023, I'm not I'm I don't make as much as I did then, but I have an understanding of how the finances work because when you file bankruptcy, you do have to take budgeting classes. You do have to take these things that teach you. And I don't have those debts sitting on my shoulders from before. Like when we got divorced, I had to take all of the utilities out of my ex-husband's name and put them in my name. Had
Yeah.
we gotten divorced prior to filing bankruptcy, I wouldn't have been able to do that because we both had bad debts with the utility companies.
I would like to say a couple things. You are being very honest, and I appreciate that because I do think that when people come out of bankruptcy, the cycle of poverty is complicated. And just like you're saying, when you have to deal with the utilities and things like that, bankruptcy doesn't change what comes in the door. And that's really important to remember. Bankruptcy changes what you have to pay, but it's not going to change what comes in the door. Number one, we can work on your credit score. I'm glad you said something. We're going to work on that outside of this, and we're going to start getting you in line again. Number two, I think the whole fact that you and your ex filed with, at the time that you did, a lot of people come to me and ask me, "Hey, I'm in the middle of a divorce. When's a good time to file bankruptcy?" And the answer is before you get a divorce and together if possible, because what you guys did was, without really realizing it, your marriage was not in a great place. Obviously, money was one example of that. Because you guys were able to do it together and get the debts done together, number one, the bankruptcy cost you less money. As your lawyer, if I'm filing bankruptcy for just you, I'm charging the same price as I'm charging for you and your spouse. Some lawyers charge like $50 extra. That it's a very minimal amount, but one person or two, if you're married, you can file together. And the only caveat is you have to be married. So filing that bankruptcy together not only saved you guys money, you only had to pay me one time as opposed to getting divorced and then each one of you paying for a bankruptcy. But number two, it took away a lot of the stuff that you might have fought about.
Mhm.
It took away a lot of the things you would have been fighting about in that divorce, and it would not have gone through smoothly. Your disillusion went through like that. You were both on the ball. You did everything that you needed to do. You both knew what you wanted, and you got it all taken care of. And that was easy for you because you weren't navigating debt. So number one, that made it very easy. Number two, there was more money in theory for each of you to go your own separate ways. He needed to go and get his own place. You both need to focus on the children. You have two beautiful children, and your children deserve the any money that your family can find. If it's not going to Capital One, or as I'm looking at your stuff, you guys had a lot of medical debt. I
Yeah.
was looking at your file, but getting rid of all of that meant no fighting, better ability for each one of you to financially go off on your own, and more money for the children for child support and
Mhm.
to take care of their
Mhm.
needs. And so for those of you who are listening out here, the hardest thing to do is to go to a bankruptcy lawyer when you think that your marriage is falling apart. But it's
Mhm.
really one of the most important times to go, because if your marriage is going to end, this is a lot easier way to allow it to happen, to help make sure that it's not as miserable. But at the same time, I will say that I've been doing this long enough that there are a lot of people who, once they're able to kind of get their money problems out on the table and kind of resolve them with the help of a professional,
Mhm.
a lot of times a lot of the fighting goes away and they're able to focus and kind of come back together. I'm not saying that everybody will, but if your marriage really is moving in that direction, filing bankruptcy can oftentimes clarify some of the issues and deal with
Mhm.
some of the problems that you'd have to otherwise deal with. I think you guys knew intuitively that there was something wrong, and you knew. I think there's a self-preservation deep down in you that knew something had to change in order
Mhm.
to make other things change. And that's
Yep.
that's truthful.
Yeah. It was definitely something that was, I mean, this is not necessarily bankruptcy talk, more marriage relationship, I guess, but I think the bankruptcy paved the way for the divorce to happen. And I think it just, like you said, I mean, we both knew there was something wrong, and money and the debt was a big problem for the both of us. And getting rid of that had us look at other things and other parts of our life and marriage. And
Yeah.
I think that's why it ultimately happened the way it did. The bankruptcy did not cause our divorce. That
Right.
is something, because somebody was like, "Well, you got divorced because you filed bankruptcy." No,
No,
actually,
no,
not at
no,
all.
no, and
No.
I'm really glad that you're making that distinction. Filing bankruptcy for you guys clarified a lot, and we already kind of knew what was going on. So that's kind of how it works. Bankruptcy is not what caused your divorce. And even as your lawyer, I knew when I first interacted with both of you, you and your husband, that it was obvious that there were some struggles. People like me can pick stuff up like that. I've
Mhm,
been doing this a
mhm,
long time. But I really love the way that you said that, and it's so important to say out loud. Filing bankruptcy is what cleared the path for you guys to be able to go in your own directions a little bit more safely, and
mhm.
bit less fear.
Yep, exactly.
That sound fair? Yeah.
Yep.
Couple of things that bankruptcy does not do, and I know we've touched on a few of these. It does not automatically take your house. You will not lose your house just simply by filing bankruptcy. As we've talked about, there are two types of bankruptcies. Talking to a bankruptcy lawyer is so important to determine what would be at risk if you filed in your state a Chapter 7. Is your house safe based on how much equity you have in it in your state? And like I've said, I've been practicing for 30 years. I've never had this happen. That's the point, right? The point is to completely avoid those types of things. The thing people are most scared about are the things that never really happen, right? Well, and like Kristen can attest to, bankruptcy does not ruin your credit. I mean,
Yeah.
by definition, Kristen had stacks like this big of people trying to sell her credit cards and cars after she filed bankruptcy, right?
Yep. And here's the deal. Adrienne, you'll hear Adrienne talk about this in her content like all the time. And I've talked about it before. No matter where your credit score is, which by the way, stop living by your friggin' credit score, man. It is not the end of
Yeah.
the world, okay?
Yeah.
I
It's
know
not
we
what you
all need
think it is
credit.
either.
It isn't. No, it's not. But I know my credit score was below below 500 when I filed. I know for a fact. And when the day after we filed or within a week or so, my credit score was up to 620.
Yeah.
And I had somebody that said, my credit score was 760 when I filed and it dropped to 590 and then it was up to like 630. And I'm like, that's about the middle of the road where it ends up. And you can build your credit back up or you can F it back up and drop it back down. Just what I did. Hello.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world. Your credit is not going to take a hit forever. I've bought 2 vehicles since filing bankruptcy. Both of them had loans. Thank God my ex-husband wrecked the one, but that's a whole nother story. I don't have to worry about that one anymore. But sorry. So I have credit cards again. I have vehicles. Like it doesn't stop your entire life. I could technically, if I wanted to, refinance my house, but you're not gonna pry that 3.2 interest rate out of my cold, dead hands anytime
That's
soon.
right. That's right. And you didn't jeopardize your 3.2 interest rate by filing for bankruptcy. That's the
Nope.
interest rate you had before we filed. And you're really touching on something that a lot of people assume. A lot of people think that filing bankruptcy is going to ruin their credit. And let me say something that I say a lot these days. Bankruptcy is not a punishment. Bankruptcy isn't the bad thing happening to you. The bad thing that happened to Kristen and her husband was debt, almost $100,000 of it. A lot of medical debt, an SBA loan from a business that she had had during 2020 that had failed. Anybody who files bankruptcy, everyone's credit score is going to end up somewhere between like 580 and 620 is the general rule, the general space where you're going to end up. 550 to 650, 580 to 620. And that means that over 60% of the clients that I file bankruptcy for in Northwest Ohio, their credit scores go up because over 60% of the people I'm filing bankruptcy for have a credit score below 550. The other 35% of the people are what I call the ball in the air people. They're the ones
Mhm.
robbing Peter to pay Paul on a level that still has their credit score artificially high. Those people think that their credit scores are amazing and will get them all these things, but you can't borrow money with a high credit score if you already have a bunch of debt to income. I had a client who had a 740 credit score. She owned a house outright. She had Social Security income, which is the most guaranteed source of income in America right now. She walked into a bank to refinance a roof on her house that she owned. Total equity, no loan on it at all. She owned a $135,000 house. She had Social Security. She had a 740 credit score. And she walked into a bank and they said, no, we cannot loan you money for a roof for your house because you have too much credit card debt. So
Mhm.
it wasn't the score, wasn't the equity in her home, it wasn't the job, it's the debt to income ratio. So people who think they have 790 credit scores that are great, that doesn't mean you can go buy a house. It doesn't mean that you can go finance a car.
Yep.
Because if you already have too much debt, the ability to do that keeps going down. And so robbing Peter to pay Paul makes the problem get bigger. And
Yep.
that's why it eventually fails. So
People really need to realize that it's not the credit score, it's your debt to income ratio that matters.
and let's be honest, I mean, if you had the amount of debt that you had and you had gone through a divorce, you'd still have the debt that you have now because
Mhm.
a lot of it was divorce related. And so then you just have a whole lot more of it, right? We have to just be reasonable about the fact that debt is an issue, debt is a problem, and we're going to continue to accumulate. We got to figure out how to navigate it more safely, and we have to understand the priority and what matters. So bankruptcy doesn't ruin your credit for 7 to 10 years. That is a myth. You can buy cars the day after we file, you can refinance homes, all of that stuff, and get your credit score back up. That happens within 1 to 2 years. So the myths that your credit score is affected forever is just simply not true. Your employer doesn't usually know, but it doesn't even matter if they do. You cannot be terminated, fired, demoted. In fact, most employers who have a legal services plan as a benefit for their employee services, a lot of people have this, they all offer bankruptcy because employers know that when their employees file for bankruptcy, they're freaking happier. That's
Mhm.
a study. that they have found. Human resources departments offer legal services plans to help you get divorced, buy real estate, and file bankruptcy. Those are the three primary things that those do, and they recognize that with their workforce, that's something that's valuable. Were you worried that everyone would know?
At first, for like maybe 14 seconds, and then I realized, because this is me, I was like, I'm gonna talk about this on social media. And I had to clear it with my ex-husband. I'm like, hey, listen, I could probably make money off of this. He was like, just leave out like personal details. I'm like, okay, dude, cool. We've got this. And so I used it to bring awareness to I saw what you were doing. And I'm like, the thing I don't see is somebody like me talking about bankruptcy. So I went into this knowing that I didn't care who knew I was filing bankruptcy. So I'm a little one off on that. But I did look into how easily accessible the information that somebody is filing bankruptcy. And people would say it gets published in the newspaper. You can look it up online. If you Google my name and this and that and the other, I've Googled my name and nothing about my bankruptcy comes up. Or maybe it did, but I had to specifically put in their bankruptcy. So it wasn't like super easy. And even then, I couldn't go look it up without having to pay for the information. In my area, they don't put it in the newspaper. And even then, who reads the newspaper anymore?
That's very dated information. They used to
It
put it
is.
in the newspapers. Maybe they still do in some small little towns and rural places. I do know that they still do it some places, but you're absolutely right. You have to go looking for this information, and the only people who are looking for information about you are people who either care about you a lot or people who hate you. So if
Mostly
somebody
hate you.
hates you, they're going to find it anyway. They can go
Mhm,
pay a service. They can
mhm.
find all of the misdemeanor. They can find all the car accidents you've been in. They can find the divorces. They can find everything you've ever done. They can find if you were ever arrested for mouthing off at a bar. Anybody can find that stuff out. And it becomes important to say, who the hell cares? The biggest problem with bankruptcy is the shame and embarrassment people feel
Yep.
because punishment. It's not punitive. It's not here to ruin your life. It literally is the ambulance that's coming along and picking you up off the ground after you've collapsed from a heart attack from all of the stress of the weight that you're carrying. And you're saying,
Exactly.
no, no, ambulance, people die in hospitals. Don't take me there. You're misunderstanding where you're at right now. You're in the bad place. Bankruptcy is the solution that
Yep.
saves you from the bad place. And so if
Yep.
we confuse bankruptcy as being the bad place itself, then we aren't ever going to be able to survive debt safely and legally. Very quickly, because I know we're wrapping up here, I want to say that there's two types of bankruptcies. We started off here. The easy one is Chapter 7. By definition, everybody wants to be in a Chapter 7, but only half of the people in every state are going to qualify because in order to file a Chapter 7, your household income has to be below a certain number based on your state. And so this is why talking to an attorney is so important because figuring out if you can file a Chapter 7 is part of the big flex here. If you can file a Chapter 7, understanding everything about it is important so that you know the advantages and you can get in and you can take advantage of it and do what you need to do. But you also have to understand that a Chapter 13 is designed for people who either A, make too much money to file the easy Chapter 7, or B, people who, if they file a Chapter 7, their house or their car might be at risk. So if you
Right.
have too much equity in your house, and if you filed a bankruptcy Chapter 7 and your house would be at risk, then we would look at a 13 for you. And so it's a different concept, but it's still there to manage debt while allowing you to keep houses, cars, and anything that you could lose in a 7, you can save in a 13. That's why I've never had a client lose anything like that, right? The decision about which chapter is right for you is really part of what an attorney does in a free consultation. You can always go to the High Heels and Hay Bales website. We have resources for you to get you paired up with a bankruptcy lawyer near you who offers free consultation. So, what do you do differently with money now? You
I
pay closer attention
really
to it. That's for
pay
damn
oh,
sure.
yeah.
I think you're
I
paying
pay
closer
very,
attention to it.
very much so. I mean, yes. Did I go out and buy a mini truck on a whim? Absolutely. But that's gonna be fun and maybe possibly make me money later down the road. But I don't spend it as freely as I did before. I make sure that my bills are paid, my household everyday bills, and we have food in the house. And if I have to not do something, then I just don't do it. I don't use my credit cards at all. I actually save money. I'm actually able to save money. Even with debt, I still make a choice to save a little bit of money every month just in case.
I love that. That's really important. I think you have learned a lot. For people who are listening, practical items that you can start thinking about right now. If you are going to be considering filing for bankruptcy, you should consider stop using your credit cards, your buy now, pay later apps. I just did a video about this on my own TikTok about Klarna and Affirm. But another thing that's really important, do not do those things in your mind that you think that sound super smart if you're going to quote file for bankruptcy. Like, don't sell your car to your brother for $1. Don't do those types of things. Just stop what you're doing and go talk to a lawyer now, because people will start to do things in anticipation of talking to a bankruptcy lawyer that they think is brilliant, and it's actually the really dumb stuff, and we don't want them doing that. So
Mhm.
stop what you're doing, put everything down, and just talk to a lawyer about your situation right now. Your situation might be different in 6 months, your situation might be different in a year. You don't have to file bankruptcy, but getting the information will certainly help you figure out the proper path for yourself. So the last thing I want to end with is, did you ever try a debt settlement company?
No, because I knew they were a sham, and I had known people that did them, and I was like, "You guys do realize that was, like, not really smart." I've known people that have done debt settlement loans
Yeah.
or the programs, so I've seen both sides of it, and I'm like, "That none of that sounds safe or like it's actually gonna work, and you're still on the hook for getting sued."
Yeah.
So I went straight to bankruptcy is the only option.
Well, maybe because you had been watching my content and I had been harassing you, trying to get you over the finish line, I wouldn't ever let you go to a debt consolidation at that point by the time you come to me. But a lot of people do make their way to debt settlement. Again, they think it sounds better than bankruptcy. It sounds more honorable. It's got better words. It's debt settlement. And those commercials make us think that it's so much better. And the reality is that's propaganda.
Mhm.
Those are private lenders trying to sell you more debt so that they can make a whole lot of money off of it. It's very unsafe. No creditor in America is required to take less than what you owe unless a federal or a local court tells them so. And the only way
Mhm.
they tell them so is in a bankruptcy. You cannot get that from a debt settlement company that you find on the internet. Nobody can do that for you. So
Right.
it is very unsafe. It is a waste of money most of the time, and it's a trick. So stop what you're doing. If you're in over your head with debt, understand that you're like millions and millions of we are at the highest debt. 1 in 4 Americans right now cannot pay off their balances, and that problem's only getting worse. The problems are getting worse with the increase of gas, the increase of the cost of living, and I just want everybody to know that bankruptcy is safe and legal. And Kristen, I'll let you end it with your final thoughts on what it was like to file for bankruptcy and whether or not other people should consider it.
Right. So filing bankruptcy, this sounds dramatic, but it saved my life. I was at a point where I thought financially, I was done for. I didn't know how I was going to do it. My anxiety and my depression was probably at the highest right before we filed. And I was at a point where I really didn't see how I was going to get out of this. And I didn't know if bankruptcy was going to be the answer until I actually talked to Adrienne and realized that there is a safe and legal option to get yourself out of the lowest place you are,
Yeah.
and my thoughts are, if you are in a place where you don't know how you're going to pay rent next month or buy food and you are living off your credit cards just to get by, call a local to you bankruptcy attorney and get a free consultation. Having a consultation does not mean you have to file bankruptcy. It means you are getting your puzzle pieces and you're putting your puzzle together so you have the full financial picture. And then you make the decision what is going to work for you. And if you don't know how you're going to come up with the money, do these 3 things for me. Find out how much it's okay, 4 things. Find out how much it's gonna cost. Check with your employer to see if they offer a legal service. After you talk to the lawyer, make sure you ask, "Hey, if I'm gonna file, can I stop paying my credit cards and this and that?" And save that money for your lawyer, for the retainer. And remember, once you retain that lawyer, that's when the creditors can stop calling you and harassing you, right?
Yeah.
So, and then 4, file. Don't drag your feet. Don't dick around. Get what you need. They aren't going to need every single statement. Make sure you have what a lawyer needs. If you're not sure, say, hey, listen, can you give me exactly what you need? Do I need totals? Do I need account numbers? Or do I just need names of the businesses I own money to so I can stop stressing myself out and get over this finish line now? And then once you file, take a huge deep breath because you did it.
That's right.
And you are on the road to rebuilding your new life with a fresh slate, and you are good to go.
I love it. Thank you very much. We will be back next week with another episode of High Heels and Hay Bales. This was a good one, Kristen. See you next week.
We hope you feel a little smarter and a little less alone than you did just 40 minutes ago.
If you learned something, leave us a review or share this with a friend who needs the truth.
Don't sign anything until you read the fine print.
And watch where you stop. See you next week.